Songs of Innocence and Experience by William Blake. Songs of Innocence and Experience is a famous collection of poems by William Blake. It explores two sides of life: innocence, which represents purity, joy, and childhood, and experience, which shows the challenges, pain, and lessons of growing up. Blake believed that these two parts of life are connected. While innocence is about seeing the world as beautiful and full of wonder, experience teaches us about hardship and reality. Together, they help us understand life more deeply. Now, let's start the story inspired by this work. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Sang to the Sky. A boy named Oliver opened his eyes. He didn't wake up to an alarm or the sound of chickens clucking. No. Oliver woke up to the song of birds outside his window. Their chirping was like music, and it made him smile every morning. Oliver loved mornings more than anything else. While other children stayed in bed, he jumped out of his blanket and ran to the hill behind his house. This hill wasn't just any hill. It was Oliver's special place. From the top, he could see the whole village. The fields looked like a patchwork quilt, and the river sparkled like silver under the sunlight. But what Oliver loved most was how quiet it was up there. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for him to do something magical, and magical it was. Every morning, Oliver sang. His voice was soft and sweet, like honey poured into the air. He didn't sing words from books or songs he had heard before. Instead, he made up his own songs. Sometimes he sang about the flowers that grew near the river. Other times, he sang about the clouds that floated lazily across the sky. Once, he even sang about a butterfly that had landed on his nose. To Oliver, the world was full of wonder. He believed the trees whispered secrets to each other, and the wind carried stories from faraway places. He didn't think about money or work or grown-up things. Life was simple, and he was happy. One day, as Oliver sat on the hill singing, something unusual happened. A woman appeared at the bottom of the hill. She was old, with gray hair and a walking stick. Her name was Mrs. Harper, and everyone in the village called her the wisest person around. Oliver had seen her before, but she had never come to the hill. He stopped singing and watched her climb slowly toward him. When she reached the top, she smiled at Oliver. "Your songs are beautiful," she said. "But do you know why they make people feel so happy?" Oliver shook his head. "I don't. And no," he replied. "I just sing what I feel." Mrs. Harper nodded. "That's because your heart is pure. You see the world through innocent eyes. Everything seems bright and full of wonder to you." Oliver tilted his head. "What do you mean, innocent eyes?" Mrs. Harper sat down beside him. "Innocence is like a clear window. You look at the world and see only beauty. You don't notice the cracks or the dirt. But as you grow older, that window gets smudged. You start to see things differently: pain, sadness, and challenges." Oliver frowned. "Why does it have to change? Why can't I always see the world this way?" Mrs. Harper sighed. "Because life isn't just about beauty. It's also about learning and growing. Those challenges, the smudges on the window, they teach you important lessons. They make you stronger and wiser." Oliver didn't understand everything Mrs. Harper said, but he felt a little uneasy. He didn't want the world to change. He wanted to keep seeing it as a magical place forever. For the rest of the day, Oliver thought about Mrs. Harper's words. He tried to ignore them, but they kept coming back to him. That night, as he lay in bed, he stared at the ceiling. What did she mean? He wondered. Will the world really stop being beautiful? The next morning, Oliver climbed the hill again. He looked at the fields, the river, and the sky. Everything seemed the same. The grass was still green, and the river still sparkled. He took a deep breath and began to sing. His voice filled the air, and for a moment, he forgot about Mrs. Harper's words. But as the days passed, Oliver started noticing small changes. One morning, he saw a farmer shouting at his son for breaking a tool. Another day, he he heard two neighbors arguing over whose cow had eaten the other's crops. These things hadn't bothered him before, but now they made him feel sad. Is this what Mrs. Harper meant? He wondered. Are these the smudges on the window? Despite these changes, Oliver kept singing. His songs were still full of joy, but now they also carried a tiny bit of curiosity. He sang about the farmer and his son, the arguing neighbors, and even the broken tools. He didn't know why, but it felt right. One afternoon, as Oliver walked home from the hill, he saw Mrs. Harper sitting by the river. She waved at him, and he went to join her. "How are you, Oliver?" she asked. "I'm okay," he replied. "But I've been thinking about what you said, about innocence and smudges." Mrs. Harper smiled. "And what have you learned?" Oliver thought for a moment. "I think I understand now. The world isn't just one thing. It's both beautiful and hard. But even when it's hard, I can still find something good, right?" Mrs. Harper nodded. "Exactly. Innocence helps you see beauty, and experience teaches you how to find it even in difficult times. Together, they make life richer." Oliver smiled. He felt better now. He realized that even though the world might change, his love for singing wouldn't. His songs could be a bridge between innocence and experience, a way to hold on to joy while facing challenges. From that day on, Oliver continued to sing. He sang about flowers and butterflies, but he also sang about farmers, tools, and arguments. His songs became a part of the village, weaving together the beauty and hardships of life. And though he didn't know it yet, these songs would stay with him as he grew older, guiding him through the journey of innocence and experience. As weeks turned into months, Oliver noticed more changes in the village. Some families struggled to grow enough food, and others worried about their homes during the rainy season. Oliver wanted to help, but he didn't know how. So he kept singing, hoping his songs would bring comfort to those who needed it. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Oliver sat on his favorite spot and looked at the horizon. He thought about Mrs. Harper's words again. "Life is both beautiful and hard," he whispered to himself. But maybe that's what makes it special. Little did Oliver know, the world was about to test his innocence in ways he couldn't imagine. But those tests would also teach him valuable lessons about strength, resilience, and the balance between joy and hardship. Chapter 2. The Storm That Changed Everything. Years passed, and Oliver grew older. He was no longer the carefree boy who sang songs about butterflies and flowers. Life in the village had changed, and so had he. The fields that once looked like a patchwork quilt now struggled to grow crops. The river that once sparkled like silver under the sun sometimes ran dry, and the villagers, who used to laugh and share stories, now spent their days working hard just to survive. Oliver noticed these changes every day. He still climbed the hill behind his house, but it wasn't the same. The grass didn't feel as soft under his feet, and the wind didn't carry the sweet smell of wildflowers anymore. Even the birds seemed quieter, as if they too felt the weight of the world. One morning, as Oliver sat on the hill, he remembered Mrs. Harper's words from years ago. "The world isn't just one thing," she had said. "It's both beautiful and hard." At the time, Oliver hadn't fully understood what she meant. But now, as he looked at the struggling village below, he began to see the truth in her words. The villagers were tired. Some families didn't have enough food to eat, and others worried about their homes during the rainy season. Oliver wanted to help, but he didn't know how. He tried to sing songs like he used to, but his voice felt different now. It wasn't as soft or sweet as before. Instead, it carried a heaviness that matched the mood of the village. One evening, as Oliver walked home from the hill, he saw two neighbors arguing over a broken fence. One man shouted, "Your cow ruined my crops!" The other replied, "I can't control where my cow goes." Their voices were loud and angry, and Oliver felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to step in and say something, but he didn't know what to say. So he turned away and went home. That night, Oliver lay in bed thinking about the argument. He thought about the farmer shouting at his son, the neighbors fighting over the cow, and the empty fields. He wondered why life had become so hard. Why couldn't things stay the way they used to be? The next morning, Oliver woke up to dark clouds covering the sky. A storm was coming. The villagers hurried to prepare for it, bringing animals inside and securing their roofs. Oliver helped as much as he could, but he couldn't shake the feeling of unease in his heart. By afternoon, the storm arrived. The wind howled like a wild animal, and rain poured down in sheets. Trees bent under the force of the wind, and rivers overflowed their banks. Oliver stayed inside with his family, listening to the chaos outside. He prayed for the storm to pass quickly, but it only grew stronger. When the storm finally ended, the village was unrecognizable. Trees had been uprooted, houses were damaged, and fields were flooded. Oliver stepped outside and looked around. His heart sank. The place he loved so much, the place he called home, was destroyed. For the first time in his life, Oliver stopped singing. He didn't feel like singing anymore. How could he sing about beauty when everything around him was broken? He spent his days helping the villagers clean up and rebuild. He worked long hours, carrying heavy tools and fixing fences. His hands became rough and calloused, and his voice grew quiet. One evening, as Oliver sat by the river, he felt tears streaming down his face. He missed the days when life was simple and full of wonder. He missed the sound of birds chirping and the way the grass smelled fresh after the rain. Most of all, he missed the joy he used to feel when he sang. Just then, he heard a faint sound. A bird singing somewhere in the distance. At first, he thought he was imagining it, but as he listened closely, he realized it was real. The bird's song was weak, almost drowned out by the sound of the rushing river. But it was there, a tiny thread of hope in a broken world. Oliver wiped his tears and smiled. "Thank you," he whispered to the bird. Its song reminded him of something important, that even in the hardest times, there is still beauty to be found. It might be small and hidden, but it's there if you look for it. From that moment on, Oliver began to see the village differently. Yes, it was damaged, but it was also alive. People were working together to rebuild their homes. Children played in the mud, laughing despite the destruction. And the river, though swollen, still flowed steadily, carrying life wherever it went. Oliver decided to start singing again. Not the same joyful songs from his childhood, but new ones that reflected the struggles and resilience of the village. His voice was deeper now, filled with emotion. He sang about storms and broken fences, about hungry families and tired farmers. But he also sang about hope, strength, and the power of community. The villagers noticed the change in Oliver's songs. At first, they were surprised. They weren't used to hearing such raw, powerful music. But soon, they began to gather around Oliver whenever he sang. His words spoke to their own struggles, and they found comfort in knowing they weren't alone. One night, after Oliver finished a particularly moving song, an old woman approached him. It was Mrs. Harper. She was older now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Oliver," she said gently, "your songs have changed." Oliver nodded. "Yes, they have. I don't see the world the same way I did as a child. That's natural," Mrs. Harper replied. "Innocence gives us joy, but experience teaches us about hardship and reality. Together, they help us understand life more deeply." Oliver thought about her words. He realized that while his songs had changed, they still came from his heart. And perhaps, in sharing his experiences, he was helping others find hope in their own lives. As the weeks passed, Oliver continued to sing. His songs brought people together. Neighbors who had once argued over fences now worked side by side, inspired by Oliver's message of unity and resilience. Even the children started joining in, humming along to his tunes. One day, as Oliver sat by the river, he saw a group of children playing nearby. They laughed and chased butterflies, reminding him of his own childhood. One of the children, a little girl with bright eyes, ran up to him. "Will you sing for us?" she asked. Oliver smiled and nodded. He began to sing, a mix of his old songs about innocence and his new ones about experience. The children listened quietly, their faces lighting up with wonder. When he finished, the little girl clapped her hands. "Your songs make me feel brave!" she exclaimed. Oliver felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that his music wasn't just for himself or the adults. It could also inspire the next generation. By sharing both sides of life, he was teaching them to appreciate the beauty of the world while preparing them for its challenges. Little did Oliver know, his journey was far from over. The storm had taught him valuable lessons about resilience and hope, but new challenges awaited him. As he looked at the recovering village, he knew he would face them with courage and with songs in his heart. Chapter 3. A New Song. After the storm, life in the village slowly began to change. Oliver's songs played a big part in this. His music brought people together, helping them forget their worries, even if just for a little while. Every evening, villagers gathered around a fire to listen to him sing. Some brought food to share. Others brought tools to fix things, and everyone brought stories to tell. It was as if Oliver's songs had created a new kind of magic, a magic that healed hearts and rebuilt the village. Oliver noticed how much his songs meant to the villagers. They weren't just melodies, they were like medicine for the soul. When he sang about storms, people nodded because they understood. When he sang about hope, they smiled because it gave them strength. And when he sang about unity, they worked harder to help each other. One day, as Oliver walked through the village, he saw something that made him smile. Two neighbors who had argued over a broken fence were now working together to repair it. One man held the wood steady, while the other hammered nails into place. Their laughter echoed through the air. Oliver stopped to watch. "Is this because of my songs?" he wondered. He didn't know for sure, but he hoped so. That evening, Oliver climbed to the top of the hill behind his house. It was his favorite spot, the place where he had sung his first songs as a child. But now, the hill felt different. The grass wasn't as soft, and the trees weren't as tall. Still, it was special to him. He sat down and looked at the village below. The fields were greener than they had been after the storm, and the river sparkled again under the setting sun. It wasn't perfect, but it was getting better. As Oliver sat there, he thought about his journey. He remembered the days when he sang only about flowers and butterflies. Back then, life seemed simple and full of wonder, but now his songs were deeper. They carried the weight of experience, the lessons he had learned from the storm, and the struggles of the village. Yet, even with all the changes, Oliver still found joy in singing. It was his way of holding on to innocence while embracing experience. Next morning, Oliver decided to do something new. He wanted to write a song. Not just any song, but one that would capture everything he had learned. He called it a new song. It would be about both the beauty and the hardships of life. It would remind people to find hope even in difficult times. Oliver spent hours thinking about the words. He wrote them down on a piece of paper, crossing out lines and rewriting them until they felt right. Then he practiced singing the song. At first, his voice wavered, unsure of the new melody. But as he sang, he grew more confident. The song felt real. It came from his heart. When Oliver finished, he went to the village square. People were busy rebuilding homes and planting crops, but they stopped when they heard him call out. "I have a new song," he said. "I want to share it with you." The villagers gathered around, curious to hear what Oliver had created. He took a deep breath and began to sing. His voice was strong and clear, filling the air with emotion. Yes, song started softly, like a whisper. It told the story of the storm, the wind that howled, the rain that poured, and the destruction it left behind. But then the melody changed. It became brighter, stronger. Oliver sang about the villagers coming together, working side by side, and finding hope in each other. By the end, the song was like a celebration, a reminder that even after the hardest times, life could bloom again. When Oliver finished, the villagers were silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Then someone clapped. Another person joined in, and soon the whole village was cheering. "That was beautiful," one woman said. "It made me feel proud of what we've done." Oliver smiled. He hadn't expected such a reaction. "This song is for all of us," he said. "It's about how we've faced challenges and kept going. I hope it reminds us to never give up." From that day on, a new song became a part of the village. People sang it while they worked, hummed it while they cooked, and taught it to their children. It was more than just a song. It was a symbol of resilience and unity. But Oliver didn't stop there. He continued to write new songs, each one inspired by the lives of the villagers. He sang about farmers planting seeds, mothers caring for their children, and friends sharing meals. His songs became a mirror, reflecting the joys and struggles of everyday life. One afternoon, as Oliver walked through the village, he noticed something unusual. A group of children had gathered near the river. They were singing one of his songs, but they had added their own words to it. Oliver stopped to listen. Their voices were high and sweet, like birds chirping. He smiled and joined them, adding his voice to theirs. Together, they created a harmony that filled the air with happiness. Later that evening, Oliver sat by the fire with Mrs. Harper. She had been watching him closely, her wise eyes following his every move. "You've grown, Oliver," she said. "Your songs have changed, just like you have." Oliver nodded. "I don't see the world the same way I did as a child," he admitted. "Sometimes I miss that innocence." "That's natural," Mrs. Harper replied. "But innocence and experience aren't opposites. They're parts of the same journey. Your childhood gave you joy, and your struggles have given you wisdom. Together, they make you who you are." Oliver thought about her words. He realized that while his songs had changed, they still came from the same place, his heart. And perhaps, by sharing his experiences, he was helping others find their own balance between joy and hardship. The next day, Oliver decided to visit the families who had struggled the most after the storm. He wanted to see how they were doing and offer his help. As he walked from house to house, he sang songs to cheer them up. Some people cried when they heard him, not because they were sad, but because his songs touched their hearts. Others laughed and hugged him, thanking him for bringing light into their lives. One family in particular stood out to Oliver. They lived in a small house at the edge of the village. Their roof was still damaged, and their fields were empty. But despite their struggles, they welcomed Oliver warmly. "Your songs keep us going," the mother said. "They remind us that better days are ahead." Oliver stayed with them for a while, helping them fix their roof and plant new seeds in their fields. As he worked, he sang softly, his voice blending with the sound of hammers and shovels. By the time he left, the family was smiling. "Thank you," the father said. "You've given us hope." That night, as Oliver lay in bed, he thought about the family. He thought about all the villagers and how far they had come since the storm. He realized that his songs weren't just about healing. They were about building a future where people cared for each other, worked together, and never lost sight of hope. The next morning, Oliver woke up early. He climbed to the top of the hill and looked at the village below. The fields were green, the river sparkled, and the houses stood strong. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive, and Oliver knew that his songs had played a part in bringing the village back to life. As he stood there, he felt a sense of peace. He had faced challenges and grown stronger because of them. He had learned to balance innocence and experience, joy and hardship. And now he was ready to face whatever came next. Little did Oliver know, new challenges awaited him. The village was healing, but the world beyond the hills was changing. News of droughts, wars, and sickness reached the villagers, reminding them that life was unpredictable. Oliver knew he couldn't solve all the problems, but he also knew he could help. With his songs, he could inspire others to stay strong, work together, and never lose hope. Chapter 4. Healing the Village. The village was healing, but it wasn't easy. Even though the storm had passed, its effects lingered. Some fields still struggled to grow crops, and a few families didn't have enough food to eat. But Oliver's songs continued to bring people together, reminding them that they weren't alone. His music gave them hope and strength, helping them face each new day with courage. One morning, as Oliver walked through the village, he noticed something unusual. A group of villagers had gathered near the river. They were talking quietly, their faces serious. Curious, Oliver went closer to listen. "What's happening?" he asked. An old man named Mr. Thompson turned to him. "We've heard news from nearby villages," he said. "There's a drought in the east, and many farms are failing. People are leaving their homes, searching for food and water." Oliver's heart sank. He had never thought about what was happening outside their small village. Life here was hard enough, but now he realized that others were suffering even more. "What can we do?" he asked. "We don't have much ourselves," Mr. Thompson admitted. "But maybe we can share what little we have. It's not much, but it might help." Oliver nodded. "I'll help too," he said. "My songs can inspire people to work together. Maybe we can find a way to help those who need it most." That evening, Oliver called a meeting in the village square. He stood on a wooden box so everyone could see him. "Friends," he began, "we've all been through hard times. We've faced storms and worked hard to rebuild our homes. But now, we've learned that other villages are struggling even more than us. They need our help." The villagers listened quietly. Some looked worried, while others nodded. "What can we do?" one woman asked. "We barely have enough for ourselves." "We may not have much," Oliver replied, "but if we work together, we can make a difference. Let's share what we can. Food, water, tools, and let's show them that we care." The villagers talked among themselves. At first, some were hesitant. They had so little to give. But then Mrs. Harper spoke up. "Oliver is right," she said. "When we share, we create hope. Not just for others, but for ourselves too. Let's do what we can." With Mrs. Harper's encouragement, the villagers agreed to help. They decided to collect food, water, and supplies to send to the nearby villages. Oliver stayed up late that night, writing a new song to inspire them. He called it "Together We Heal." It was about working together, sharing what you have, and finding strength in unity. The next morning, Oliver sang the song in the village square. His voice was strong and clear, filling the air with hope. The villagers listened, feeling a sense of purpose. They began gathering supplies, working together to pack bags of food and fill jars with clean water. Even the children helped, carrying small items and singing along with Oliver. By the end of the week, the villagers had collected enough to send to the nearby villages. They loaded everything onto carts and set off early one morning. Oliver went with them, leading the way with his songs. As they traveled, they saw signs of the drought, dry fields, empty rivers, and tired faces. But when they arrived at our first village, their hearts broke. The people there were thin and weak, their clothes torn and dirty. Children cried softly, and parents looked hopeless. Oliver stepped forward and began to sing. His voice carried across the village, soft and gentle at first, then stronger. The villagers stopped what they were doing and listened. Slowly, their faces softened, and some even smiled. After the song, Oliver spoke. "We've brought food and water to share," he said. "It's not much, but we hope it helps. And remember, you are not alone. "We are here for you." The villagers thanked them with tears in their eyes. They shared stories of how hard life had been since the drought began. Oliver listened carefully, feeling their pain, but also their resilience. He realized that even in the hardest times, people could find strength in each other. When the villagers returned home, they felt proud of what they had done. They had given what little they had, and it had made a difference. But Oliver knew there was still more to do. The drought wasn't over, and other villages needed help too. Over the next few weeks, Oliver and the villagers continued their efforts. They sent more supplies to nearby villages and welcomed travelers who came seeking help. Some stayed for a short time, while others decided to join the village. The community grew larger, but it also grew stronger. Everyone worked together, sharing food, water, and stories. One evening, as Oliver sat by the fire with Mrs. Harper, he thought about how much the village had changed. "We've grown so much," he said. "Not just in size, but in spirit. We've learned to care for each other, even when times are hard." Mrs. Harper nodded. "Yes, Oliver, you've taught them an important lesson. That kindness and unity can heal even the deepest wounds." Oliver smiled, but he also felt a sense of responsibility. He knew the village still faced challenges. The drought was spreading, and resources were running low. But he also knew that as long as they worked together, they could overcome anything. The next day, Oliver decided to visit the fields. He wanted to see how the crops were growing and talk to the farmers. As he walked, he sang softly, his voice blending with the sound of the wind. When he reached the fields, he saw the farmers working hard, planting seeds and watering the soil. Despite the drought, they hadn't given up. "Thank you for your hard work," Oliver said. "You're making a difference." One farmer, a young man named Peter, smiled. "Your songs keep us going," he said. "They remind us that better days are ahead." Oliver stayed with the farmers for a while, helping them plant seeds and telling stories to keep their spirits high. By the time he left, the fields were alive with laughter and hope. Later that evening, Oliver climbed to the top of the hill behind his house. It was his favorite spot, the place where he had sung his first songs as a child. Now, the hill felt different. The grass wasn't as soft, and the trees weren't as tall, but it was still special to him. He sat down and looked at the village below. The fields were greener than they had been after the storm, and the river sparkled again under the setting sun. It wasn't perfect, but it was getting better. As Oliver sat there, he thought about everything that had happened. He remembered the storm, the struggles of the village, and the journey they had taken together. He realized that healing wasn't just about fixing things. It was about coming together, sharing hope, and finding strength in each other. The next morning, Oliver woke up early. He climbed to the top of the hill and looked at the village below. The fields were green, the river sparkled, and the houses stood strong. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. And Oliver knew that his songs had played a part in bringing the village back to life. As he stood there, he felt a sense of peace. He had faced the challenges and grown stronger because of them. He had learned to balance innocence and experience, joy and hardship. And now he was ready to face whatever came next. Little did Oliver know, new challenges awaited him. The drought was spreading, and the world beyond the hills was changing. News of wars, sickness, and hunger reached the villagers, reminding them that life was unpredictable. Oliver knew he couldn't solve all the problems, but he also knew he could help. With his songs, he could inspire others to stay strong, work together, and never lose hope. Chapter 5. A Legacy of Songs. Years passed, and Oliver grew older. His hair turned grey, and his hands became rough from years of hard work. But his voice remained strong, and his songs continued to inspire the village. Life wasn't perfect. There were still droughts, storms, and challenges. But the villagers faced them together, just as Oliver had taught them. The village had changed in many ways. New families had joined, bringing fresh ideas and energy. Fields that had once struggled to grow crops now flourished, thanks to the farmers' hard work and shared knowledge. The river, which had once overflowed during storms, was now carefully managed with canals and dams built by the villagers working, side by side. Even the hill where Oliver used to sing as a boy had been transformed into a gathering place, with benches and flowers planted by the children. Oliver spent most of his days sitting under the big oak tree in the village square. People often came to talk to him, sharing their stories and asking for advice. He listened patiently, offering wisdom gained from a lifetime of experience. "Life is both beautiful and hard," he would say. "But if we face it together, we can find joy even in the hardest times." One morning, as Oliver sat under the oak tree, a group of children ran up to him. They were laughing and holding hands, their faces bright with excitement. "Oliver!" one of them called out. "Will you teach us your songs?" Oliver smiled and nodded. "Of course," he said. "But first, tell me, what do you know about songs?" The children looked at each other, unsure how to answer. Finally, a little girl named Lily spoke up. "Songs make people happy," she said. "They help us feel brave when we're scared." Oliver nodded. "That's right," he said. "Songs are like bridges. They connect us to each other and to the world around us. They remind us of who we are and what we can do." The call. Children gathered around him, eager to learn. Oliver began to sing, his voice soft and gentle. He started with the songs he had written as a child, the ones about flowers, butterflies, and the sparkling river. Then he moved on to the songs he had written after the storm, the ones about resilience, hope, and unity. The children listened, quietly, their eyes wide with wonder. When he finished, Lily raised her hand. "Can we sing too?" she asked. Oliver smiled. "Of course," he said. "Singing is for everyone." The children joined in, their voices high and sweet, blending with Oliver's deeper tones. Together, they created a harmony that filled the air with happiness. Villagers passing by stopped to listen, smiling as they heard the familiar melodies. Some even joined in, adding their voices to the chorus. As the song ended, the children clapped and cheered. "That was fun," Lily exclaimed. "Can we learn another one tomorrow?" Oliver nodded. "Every day, if you'd like," he said. "But remember, songs aren't just for singing. They're for living. When you face challenges, think of the songs we've learned. Let them guide you and give you strength." The children promised they would, and they ran off to play, humming the melodies as they went. Oliver watched them go, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He knew that his songs would live on through them, just as Mrs. Harper's wisdom had lived on through him. Later that evening, Oliver climbed to the top of the hill behind his house. It was his favorite spot, the place where he had sung his first songs as a boy. Now, the hill felt different. The grass wasn't as soft, and the trees weren't as tall, but it was still special to him. He sat down and looked at the village below. The fields were green, the river sparkled, and the houses stood strong. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. And Oliver knew that his songs had played a part in bringing the village back to life. As he sat there, he thought about everything that had happened. He remembered the storm, the struggles of the village, and the journey they had taken together. He realized that healing wasn't just about fixing things. It was about coming together, sharing hope, and finding strength in each other. The next morning, Oliver woke up early. He climbed to the top of the hill and looked at the village below. The fields were green, the river sparkled, and the houses stood strong. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. And Oliver knew that his songs had played a part in bringing the village back to life. As he stood there, he felt a sense of peace. He had faced challenges and grown stronger because of them. He had learned to balance innocence and experience, joy and hardship. And now, he was ready to face whatever came next. Little did Oliver know, new challenges awaited him. The drought was spreading, and the world beyond the hills was changing. News of wars, sickness, and hunger reached the villagers, reminding them, that life was unpredictable. Oliver knew he couldn't solve all the problems, but he also knew he could help. With his songs, he could inspire others to stay strong, work together, and never lose hope. One evening, as Oliver sat under the oak tree, Mrs. Harper approached him. She was very old now, her steps slow and her voice soft. "Oliver," she said, "you've done so much for this village. Your songs have healed hearts and brought people together." Oliver smiled. "I didn't do it alone," he replied. "It was all of us, working together, sharing hope." Mrs. Harper nodded. "Yes, but you were the one who showed them the way. You reminded them of the beauty in the world, even when times were hard." Oliver thought about her words. He realized that his songs weren't just melodies. They were lessons. Lessons about kindness, courage, and unity. Lessons that would stay with the villagers long after he was gone. The next day, Oliver called a meeting in the village square. He stood on a wooden box so everyone could see him. "Friends," he began, "I want to thank you for everything you've done. You've worked hard, cared for each other, and never lost hope. But now, I want to ask you for one more thing." The villagers listened quietly, curious about what he would say. "Teach your children the songs," Oliver continued. "Teach them the lessons we've learned, to care for each other, to share what we have, and to never give up. These songs are our legacy, and they will guide future generations." The villagers nodded, promising to keep the songs alive. That night, as Oliver lay in bed, he felt a deep sense of peace. He knew his time was coming to an end, but he wasn't afraid. His songs would live on, carried by the voices of the villagers and their children. The next morning, Oliver climbed to the top of the hill one last time. He looked out at the village, smiling at the sight of the green fields, sparkling river, and strong houses. He closed his eyes and began to sing. A soft, gentle melody that floated through the air like a whisper. When he finished, he sat quietly, listening to the sounds of the world around him. As the sun set behind the hills, Oliver closed his eyes and let the cool breeze wash over him. He felt no pain, only peace. The villagers found him the next morning, sitting peacefully on the hill. Though they mourned his passing, they knew his legacy would live on. From that day forward, the villagers continued to sing Oliver's songs. They passed them down to their children, ensuring that the balance of innocence and experience would always be remembered. And so, Oliver's voice lived on, not just in the village, but in the hearts of all who heard his music. Even today, if you visit the village, you might hear the sound of singing drifting through the air. It's the voice of Oliver, carried by the wind, reminding everyone of the beauty and strength that lies within us all. The end. This concludes the story of Oliver and his songs. It teaches us that life is a journey of both innocence and experience, and that through kindness, unity, and hope, we can overcome even the hardest challenges. Oliver's legacy reminds us that our actions, no matter how small, can leave a lasting impact on the world.